Okay, we are in the creative corner today with Ebony J. Ebony, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got started?
So first off, thank you again so much for having me. So I am a mental health therapist. I actually go by the trap therapist, which is important for me to say because it just speaks to our people. In our culture, we don't, we've been taught that therapy is not good, like that's for crazy people or Black people don't go. So I wanted to be creative, and do something that get attention and to let people know that even though I have all of these credentials, whatever type of license background, um, like I'm still here to help and support my people.
Okay, we are in the creative corner on ESPN Richmond 106.1 with Ebony J, the trap therapist. So can you speak to the where mental health is now after the pandemic and how that is kind of helping or hurting your business?
So the one thing that people forget about, like with the pandemic, even when they talk about the frontline workers and stuff like that, is that therapists have been frontline workers. Like the whole time that people have been off, when the world was shut down and stuff like that, we continue to work because it actually heightened. So I have not had time off like the rest of the world. And so my business has not suffered at all. It's, sad because that means a lot of people are coming, a lot of people are hurting, but it's good because a lot of people, it made people come. It made people like, oh no, something is wrong, something is not okay, or I don't want to go back to life, business as usual. So I've seen personally a huge increase in clientele. And then people get very excited when they learn that it's a Black therapist, when it's somebody who look like them, who, typically talk like them, and who they feel can actually relate to them. So it has done me well on that
What
case, that side.
what originally made you want to go to school for therapy, like, or for
So
counseling?
I've always been a type of person who just wanted to be around, like, I guess, like the underdogs or people, like just always like a helpful type of person. And my grandmother actually told me when I was about 12 years old, she was a minister, so she spoke prophetically that I was going to be a counselor. And I'm like, this lady is crazy. I'm going to do hair. I'm not going to do counseling. So I actually went to hair school. And so she was like, well, when people sit in your chair, do they talk to you and all of this? I was like, yeah, she's like, you're still a counselor. And so life happened, different things happened, and I decided to change careers. And when I went to school, I couldn't find anything that made sense or that fit to me but counseling.
Mm.
So I was just like, well, I'm gonna just do this for now and see how it goes, and actually fell in love with it.
Okay, we are in the creative corner with Ebony J. One of the questions I want to ask you is, like, now there's several different options for therapy available. Like, before we knew it as going on the couch, laying there, telling someone your problems who probably didn't look like you. So like you said, now people are younger doing this. People talk like you, people look like you. What are your thoughts on the new apps such as, like, what is it, Talkspace and BetterHelp, where you can get therapy via the phone or chat? Like, what do you think about that?
So I don't really know that much about those companies. I hear, my other therapists talk about it and different things like that. But what I want to say, the other thing that the pandemic did do for us is that we are all able to do that. So a lot of therapists are um, able to provide therapy on. So like for me, particularly in my agency, we can do Zoom, we can do FaceTime, we can call you on the phone, we can do or we can do in person. So it did afford a lot of options. The only thing about those type of platforms that you named is that you don't always get the same therapist, from my understanding. So it's not as
Oh.
personable. It's not somebody that you connect with long term. That's for a shorter term situation where you go there and you talk to a therapist very short term, versus if you go to an actual private practice or agency, you'll get the same therapist as long as they work there and as long as in counseling.
Another question I have is, I know, like, I know there's probably a difference between like situations that require short-term therapy and then long-term therapy. Can you just give us like a couple situations as to what a short-term therapy person would look like and what someone who may need a longer longer sessions, like what kind of trauma have they been through?
So it really depends on the person. But if you think about the pandemic is could be a short-term situation because when the world shut down, when everything happened, people was fearful. We didn't know what was going to happen, what was coming next. We still don't to an extent. There's still
Yeah.
fears surrounding that with children. A lot of kids were afraid. They were at home and they were, quote unquote safe, but they still had to worry about their parents going out. And you're hearing on the news that people are dying and all of this type of things. So that could be considered short term. And then longer term, it would just depends on the experience. Of course, you hear about like bipolar and the psycho things that you take like medicine for and stuff like that. But I think what I would like people to know more, a better question or a better answer than short term and long term is that what can you go to therapy for? So people don't recognize that you can go to therapy for almost anything. You could go to therapy for relationships. You could go to therapy for parenting. Like I said, you could go for pandemic. You can go for job stress. You can go because you just don't know what you need to do next. So it's not all like people think it's for crazy or it has to be dramatic, and it's not that. Like you literally can go, of course within reason, but you literally can go just to find out how to adjust to anything that's happening to you in life.
Okay. And what would you say to those who say, because you hear this in our community a lot, like I'm not telling nobody my problems. What can you say to that mindset that someone may have about going to see counseling or going to a family counselor? Because you said you're parenting and relationship
So
focused.
my private practice, we have 5 therapists and they specialize in different areas. Me particularly, I particularly specialize in healthy relationships and parenting. So what I would say a couple of different things. One, so I'm very active in the world, in this therapy world. So I have a podcast. So I would of course refer them to the podcast and just kind of let them know sometimes, when people hear and see what we talk about, that we're actually giving you tips and tools. But again, that it's in a way that you can relate to it. That eases some people's minds. I also wrote a book, actually 2 books, but the one book, it helps parents. So it gives you, but it can be applied to anybody. So it just kind of tells you some of the things, it breaks down some things that you might want to go to therapy for. So, it might say something like if you're stressed out or if you are like stuff that people just typically don't think about. And so when people read it, they're like, oh yeah, I did deal with that. Or I know, this person is dealing with this. So I may suggest that they go to therapy. And it's more about the fear. It's about people being afraid of what, like you said, am I going to be judged? Is this person going to understand? Like, am I going to look crazy? And I tell my clients all the time, like, I get to be your professional best friend. So professional, because we're going to have boundaries. You can't call me all the time, but if you think about what a best friend is, you should be able to call and talk to your best friend. They should get you together when you need to gotten together, but they also should be supportive, and you shouldn't feel judged. They shouldn't tell you, you know, um, like you're crazy or anything like that. Not a real best friend. So when I can, talk to people like that and they can understand that, because everybody needs somebody to talk to. They're always talking about the strong friends and they like check on your strong friends because who do they have to go to? So even I have clients like that who just they're everybody go to person. They don't have anybody to go to. And it's like, well, what do you do then? So it's like, would you rather have a nervous breakdown? Would you rather lose everybody? Or would you rather just come, talk to me, let's work it out, let's figure out how you can say no to some of those things, how you can set boundaries, and that's simply it. So it's not, it's about just having somebody to clear that space up with, versus it's just being about you being crazy.
We're in the creative corner with Ebony J, the trap therapist. So you talked about your agency, Enduring the Course Inc. Can you tell us a little bit about that what services you guys offer and like when you get started, with the
So
company?
I've done it a little bit uniquely. Most private practice are for or are for profit. My Enduring the Course Inc. is actually a nonprofit, and so because of that, we get to offer some other services to the community that's not always able to be offered through through private practice. So, like I said, I think it's like five of us. So we offer coaching, we offer therapy, and then we have like groups and different things like that. So we offer a lot of services just to be able to help people work on themselves as a whole. So, if it's like I said, family issues, if it's parenting issues, if it is grief, like whatever you need to work on, like whatever you can experience in life, we have a person that you can be connected to and that you can get support from.
A question that I have for you is, are you seeing a certain age group now that's seeking help? Like, or is it just kind of just everybody now that the
It's
pandemic's
everybody.
on? It's everybody.
It's
What
everybody.
because you specialize in parenting, are you seeing a lot of parents bring their children in?
So yes and no. So people, I the reason why I specialize in parenting is because for a while I was seeing clients and I would have kids and the parents would be like, so if you have a diagnosis, there are things that you have to do to decrease the symptoms of that. And so the parents insurance only cover a certain amount of things.
Mhm.
So the parents, if it's anything related specifically to the client, you can do it. But what about if your child has, let's say your child has ADHD, and with ADHD, they're bouncing off the wall, they're doing all of this type of stuff. Who's actually teaching the parents how to navigate that? Like there's support for the child, there's support in the school, for the child, but who's actually telling the parents when a parent is feeling like I almost hate my kid because they're all over the place, or I'm so overwhelmed because everything is about this kid, and or they want me to put my kid on medicine, but I don't want to put them on medicine, or I'm not sure, or what happens. Like, who's helping the parent to work through those things to see the benefits of medicine or why they shouldn't do medicine, or just to help support the parents. So that's how I started doing that. So I get a lot of parents based on their client, I'm sorry, based on their children needing services.
Okay. The last one of the last questions I have for you is, for anyone who may be seeking counseling, for anyone, like, what was probably the hardest step? the Let me ask you this first. Were you the only one to start your nonprofit, or was it kind of like a group collective and then you guys started it together?
No, it was me, and then I expanded, I added people.
Okay. Okay. So what was probably the hardest route of that, finding reliable people? What was probably the hardest growth part for you?
Yeah, that's, oh God, yes, it is. The hardest part about it is because, and people don't recognize this too, is that when you're in this field, unless you're like salary at an agency or something like that, which if we talk about finances, you're getting paid a lot less typically. We're fee for service. So that means if you don't show up, it's almost like a hairstylist. If you don't
Mhm.
show up, then we don't get paid for that. So there's not a lot of people who can support a family like that on when you have fickle clients. So it's very hard it takes time to build up clients. And so people can't just take a chance to come and do it. So I've had to do a lot of work, getting a lot of clients, getting a lot of visibility. And then I typically get people because they need to have, a certain amount to pay caseload. They need to have a certain amount of their caseload in order to pay their bills. So it's very hard to keep people. And then, like I said, when as the world has had breaks and different things like that, remember therapists typically have not. And so therapists are still suffering through that. Therapists, are
Yeah.
humans. So they've lost people, or they've had COVID, or they had, different experiences. And so they're a lot stressed out. They're a lot burnt out. I get calls all the time, or when I meet with other agencies and stuff like that, they're like, we can't keep therapists. And it's because they haven't been taught or they haven't been able to practice self-care. And so they're burnt out. And so it is very hard to do that. And then a lot of people don't want to, there are certain licensures and credentials that you have to keep up with, and people either don't know or they don't have them. And so it puts you in a
Mhm.
box. So yeah.
Okay, we are in the creative corner with Ebony J, who has been telling us about Enduring the Course Inc. and everything that you guys offer. Can you just give the people some final words? Speak to the person who may be sitting here listening to this, who may need to go to therapy, but there's no one to kind of push them over the edge to actually make the call. So, what would you say to someone like that?
I would say one thing that I like people to know is that as a therapist, as a business owner, as what is considered successful, I see a therapist. And that's important for people to know that, because we're human. Life happens to all of us. Like, you are not weak. You're actually stronger to go somewhere to learn how to do something different. When something's not working for you and you're deciding like, this is not working, I'm uncomfortable, I'm unhappy, I need to do something. Like, that's way more stronger than somebody judging you or somebody calling you names. The other thing is that therapists are confidential. So whatever you go in there and say, they cannot tell other people. So nobody has to know that you go to therapy.
Mhm. Okay, so tell the people where they can find Enduring the Course and where you're at on social media so people can find you.
So you can find me on social media, is Ebony underscore J. The J is JAE. And you'll know it's me because it'll come up. The chat therapist is associated with that. And you can check our website out. It's www.enduringthecourse.org.
Well, Ebony, I just want to thank you for coming into the Creative Corner on Creative Hustle, where we like to ask people how they took their ideas and turned it into a business. And lastly, I just really want to commend you on everything that you're doing, because you are the reason why a lot of people are still standing, especially during this pandemic, because a lot of people have not been able, as we've seen in the media and the news, a lot of people haven't been able to handle everything that's going on. So kudos to you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. All right, let me